Star Wars 7x7 episode 2160. So it's not all that often that we have serious conversations here on the show, and not all that often that we have serious conversations that take us outside the world of the galaxy far, far away and into the real world where things are a lot different, and yet a lot of the themes that we encounter in that galaxy far, far away are echoes of what we are encountering in our daily lives. So I've had Yoda's quote from the Phantom Menace on my mind a lot in this past week. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. And the reason that I've been thinking about this is probably not all that hard to guess, but I'm going to at least talk about the beginning of it because it matters to the ending of it. It's about the fact that a man in Minneapolis, a black man by the name of George Floyd, was killed by a white police officer while in the white police officer's custody. And since that day, it's only been a week, the United States has erupted. I have thought about what word I would choose in this space, and I don't have a better one. Erupted, I can't even think of a better, more appropriate word for the situation. I was living in Los Angeles. I grew up there and was there during the time when the Rodney King riots happened. And what I saw then doesn't even compare. Like, that was just a pale foreshadowing of the kind of activity that we're seeing in the United States across dozens of cities. And now things have gotten more complicated. And by that, I mean that the activity that we are seeing in the streets of Seattle, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Louisville, Dallas, you name them, wherever there are fires burning, these are not all fires anymore of the people who were protesting specifically about the act that sparked this situation. I was talking to a neighbor of mine who is on one particular side of a political spectrum, if you could even define politics by a straight line anymore. And my response was that I think that there are people from all points of the political compass who will take advantage of a situation for their own personal gain, regardless of what is going on. That's just in the nature of some people. It is unfortunate, and yet it is something that we all deal with on a daily basis in small ways, and now we are dealing with it in large ways. These are dangerous times that we are living in right now, and I wish that I believed that they would become less dangerous very quickly. It does not seem like that is going to be the case. A couple of months ago, I talked about how frivolous it seemed at the time to continue to do a daily Star Wars podcast, considering that there was a global pandemic going on, but that I felt as though bringing a little bit of light into the world, bringing a little bit of joy in the way that I can, that was still a necessity, that there was still a need to allow a brief respite from what was going on in the world. And I still feel that way, and I am still going to be doing this show, and we are still going to talk about very light things on this show. But for today, we're going to talk about a couple heavier things, and a couple of things that I am going to beg you please to consider. One of them is a pretty easy one. Please take care of yourselves, take care of your families and your loved ones and your friends and your community. Keep each other safe. And by each other, I mean everyone around you. Keep yourselves safe. Keep your friends and your family and your neighbors safe. The second thing is to do with the fact that there are a lot of terrible things happening in the world right now, and we can bear witness to this. We can listen to people who are in pain and do it without letting our egos get in the way. Actually hear what people are trying to say and see what we can do to help people who are in pain. And I have friends and family who are in law enforcement, who have family members who are in law enforcement. And to a person, I've heard nothing but appalled reactions, abhorrence to what happened. We need to keep our eye on the inciting incident for this, which is that a black man was killed by a white police officer, and other police officers stood by and did not help. There needs to be justice for George Floyd and for the African American community at large. And that leads me to the third thing. I will be perfectly honest with you. The idea of Black Lives Matter, it's something that I guess in theory, as I've gone about my life, I've said, yeah, that's fine. That's great. Sure. Yeah. I'm all for that. Fine. But I had not really considered how important it was. And I've had the luxury of not having had to consider how important it is. I've heard people respond to it by saying all lives matter. And, that sounds fine also in its way, but I've come to understand that while that's a semantically correct idea, I hear that expressed as a means of avoiding saying that Black Lives Matter. And I have come to understand that we can't avoid saying that any longer. I'm saying we, and if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you've probably heard this verbal tick from me. When I say we, I mean me. I am the only person who does this show. I research, record, produce, host, publish, all of it. So it's all me. So I'm saying me. I have to be better. I have to step up. I will not speak for all white people. I certainly can't and wouldn't. And I cannot and will not speak for people of color. I will speak in support of people of color, but it is not my place to speak for them. But what I hope that you will consider is that if you have not said that Black Lives Matter, if you have not made that a public statement that you are willing to make, I hope you will consider doing so. I strongly believe that the African American community needs to hear this from as many voices as possible. It needs to be the loudest voice in this nation. And I'm not saying that it's a cure-all. It would be wonderful if hundreds of millions of people saying Black Lives Matter would have the effect of a magic spell and wipe away everything that's happened. That's obviously a fantasy and ridiculous, but imagine if that could happen, if the African American community could hear that their lives matter, specifically that Black lives matter to hundreds of millions of people in the country. Imagine how that could be the start of healing. That could be a different kind of inciting incident in all of our lives. Now, because I feel like I have to cover my backside a little bit, I am going to say the stuff that you get to hear in the funny sped up voice with the funny music, and say that this podcast is not sponsored, affiliated, endorsed, or have anything to do with any fashion with Lucasfilm or Disney or 20th Century Fox or any of their affiliates, and all copyrights for every character and every concept related to Star Wars belong to them. So that way, we're clear that I am speaking on my own behalf. Please keep yourselves and your loved ones safe. Please, wherever you can and wherever you're able, consider how you're able to act from love in place of fear, as long as you are safe. And thank you for being a part of a fandom that values inclusivity and diversity and will continue to support the African American community, especially now when they need us more than ever. May the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.